Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on board this new video on Remnant from the Ashes. The new DLC Subject 2923 is now live on all the platforms, and here there are the patch notes for everything that's been changed in-game. Now, before we get into the patch notes, be aware that these changes have been already online for PC users at least for the last week. So we already have experienced those. But for consoles, they will be available only once the DLC gets released. Dev says that with the addition to the new DLC Subject 2923, they went back and revamped a ton of older items to make sure they are more viable across the board. The majority of changes revolves around trinkets, amulets and rings, and armors. Yes, they did change armor again. Now, I personally don't like that much that they keep going back and changing the armor effects, because that messes up a lot with the builds, and I understand many of you are back on the game just to play the DLC, and you just find out that your build is completely messed up because they change a lot of the items effects. On one side of things, that could keep things fresh, because you are forced to go around, check alternatives, and slightly change your playstyle, and that impacts the game positively in my opinion, because you have to adapt, change, and basically you don't get bored by using the same things over and over. But on the other side, it would be nice to say that you finally have a build that goes well with every situation, or most of the situation, and you're happy with that, without being afraid that your build will have to be changed in the future necessarily to adapt the new game updates. But that's just my opinion. Alright, we'll start with General, Wallstone and Ward Shards. Now resting at one of our checkpoints will refill your mod power. The devs said that in addition to restore health and ammo, they now will refill mod power, because no one wants to be defeated from a boss and then feel weaker on their next attempt. So personally, I can understand that logic, but on the other hand, I quite like it as it was before, because you had that good chance the first time you were fighting the boss, and you had that little extra in order to defeat the boss, because you didn't know the boss, you never saw the boss, and you didn't have any idea of what you could expect from the boss. In that regards, you had your mods available, and then later on, when you already fought the boss and you know more or less what to expect, you had to start without. I think that was a bit fair. You were exchanging the knowledge of the boss for your mod power. But that's probably just me. I believe many players will welcome this change in a very positive way. Summons. Item perks traits that increase now. Mod damage will affect summons. The health of the summon now will scale with weapon level of the weapon they are slotted into. Summons can now crit on players' critical value, and summons can now deal weak spot damage with their own modifier. On that note, Iron Sentinel will now be deactivated when the player gets defeated. These are just some quality of life improvements, but yes, there's a lot of summoner players, and yes, these are very much welcome changes. They've got something also for those melee guys. Gain 10% weak spot damage modifier across the board. Proc chance effect on special weapon will now no longer proc on basic strikes, but it will be guaranteed for strong strikes as well. So now the special melee weapons will inflict their special effects once you strike your enemies with a heavy hit. Buff icons have been changed in colors. Red is for offensive buffs, blue is for defense, green for healing effects, and yellow for utilities. And armor buff use their specific icons, so it's easier to differentiate which is which. A perfect dodge effect is being added while you're using perfect dodge items, so you don't have to look at your status bar to see if you activated the perfect dodge. You will have a visual representation of the effects and probably a sound as well on your character. Now for trinkets, almost all of them are being reworked, almost not all, but almost all of them. This is the longest part of the list, and you can check that for yourself. I'll leave the link in the description as always. But let's go to the armors, because these are the ones that are being changed the most. We have a bunch of new options for armor, some of their effects has been reworked completely, and I want to touch upon those in particular, 6 of them that are the most interesting in my opinion. We start off with the Void armor that has been adjusted. Since the last update, the Corsus DLC, this armor was changed into a sort of power stacking bonus when you were not taking damage, and defense stacking bonus when you were taking damage. As a concept it was good, but it turned out not to be that great, because by the time you were getting that much damage to build up the maximum possible defense reduction, which was 30% I believe, you were pretty much dead. And so the defense part of the armor was not at its full potential, because you couldn't sustain that much damage in order to take advantage of it properly. Now it has been changed. Instead of having 5 stacks of each offensive and defensive buff, it does have only 1 stack of 25%, either being offensive if you don't get damage for a certain period of time, and 25% defense once you get it once. This is a great buff for this armor in my opinion, because you just need to wait a bit in order to get the full potential for offense without being hit, and if you get it you will have full potential for defense. That's 25% reduction to any kind of damage, and that's a very good buff for this armor. Second armor is the Drifter armor set. It has been completely reworked. The new perk is now that gives you inertia stacks. It works in a way that if you're sprinting, dodging or sliding, you get a stack of inertia. You can stack 5 of those, and each of them will be a 5% bonus damage if you're wearing the 3-piece set. Now you can get the 2-piece set immediately once you start the game, and the 3rd-piece set is a random chance drop from Hearth, the first world. Even though it's a random chance, it's quite common to find it in the first or second section of the Earth. If you don't, you can try to find it in adventure mode. It's really not that difficult to find the Drifter mask, and I think the buff to the damage is worth it, because it's 3% only for 3 pieces of the set, but it's 5% for the full set, and each stacks last 10 seconds and they wear off one at a time. So let's say you are having 25% bonus because you're sprinting for 5 seconds, then you need to get to cover for like more than 10 seconds because you're sustaining enemy fire. So one of your stack wears off, you will still have 20% bonus damage to any of your damage source, which is great. And you only need to dodge or sprint for more than 1 second and you will have the full potential back. It's a really good buff and new bonus set to this armor, because with the previous updates this armor was kinda left in the shadows. It was providing a good bonus effect at the beginning of the game, but then as soon as you were starting to get like more interesting piece of armors, this was kind of being left behind, and instead in this way I can see like endgaming builds using this full set, especially characters who are really nimble, which playstyles revolves around stamina use, and maybe in conjunction with the Wolf Ring that would be great. The anti-set has been reworked again. Now at the beginning this set was good for long range, and then they changed it in order to be good to weak spots, or the other way around, I don't remember right now, but what they did now is that they merged the two things together. So you will get a bonus damage for hitting weak spots, and you will get a bonus in range damage as well, making this set the true sniper set. I'd like also to touch briefly on the Radiant armor set, which was kinda left behind from the previous updates. It was still one of the best armor sets in the game, it was still good, but the damage was kinda being like surpassed by other sets. I think they really love these armor sets, and in order to make it really shine they powered up a little bit the damage, and they extended the duration of each critical stack by half seconds. So before it was 2.5 seconds, now it's 3 seconds before it wears off. I think they wanted to keep these as one of the most viable options, because it's an heavy armor set, it's really good for damage, but it's terrible for dodging around and evading enemies' attacks. So the idea with that is that you want to annihilate your enemies before they can even get close to you, otherwise you're gonna have problems. So I see why they went in this way. Moving to one of my favorites, which is the Twisted armor set. The theme of this armor set has always been HP recovery. They didn't change it completely. They still wanted to keep the theme going on, but now they moved the recovery effects into the secondary effect. So by wearing any of the pieces of the Twisted armor set, you will heal HP over time. The primary effect is now being reworked and it's called Bloom, and what it does is that it gives you 10 stacks of damage boost. While you are at maximum HP, you will slowly get those stacks. They can stack up to 10 times and in turn boost your damage. Be careful though, because if you get hit while in full bloom, you will lose 5 stacks of power. And if you couple that with the fact that you need to be at full HP in order to regaining those stacks, you really don't want to get hit while wearing this armor set. Anyway, I personally like the effects. This was one of my favorite armor sets before the update and always been, because I like healing effects and healing builds. And some of the healing trinkets have been also buffed, so I can definitely see a build for this new style of play for this armor set. I will just need to adapt and see what I can do, but I'm quite sure I can come up with something. Now, the Ex-Cultist armor set, and it's another of those ones that's been completely reworked. Now they went for prolonging your mode duration. The more pieces you have of the set, the longer your mode will last once activated. This is great for modes like Song of Swords, Swarm, Hunter's Mark and so on. And now with this you will be able to make them last longer. It's quite a change, because this set has always been revolved around charging your mods faster rather than making them last longer, but I think that with the new resting at checkpoints restores your mod, they wanted to upgrade these sets as well. Personally, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't use these sets anymore. Before, at the beginning of the game, was one of the best sets in the entire game in my opinion, and I wear it for the entirety of my first playing through, basically because it was simply too good. It was charging your mod power like immediately when hitting weak spots. And it was too good, but then it went through different reworks. We'll see how this new one will work out. And to close this chapter of the armors, we have the Letos armor sets. Now, Letos has always been a very unique armor sets, starting off from the fact that you need a 3-piece set in order to get the one effect that the armor was providing, which was stagger reduction. Now they completely reworked Letos armors as well. With 1 piece only, you will get 25% stamina reduction cost. With 2 pieces, you will get the all 3 pieces bonus, which is the stagger reduction, and with 3 pieces gets a 10% damage reduction per 10% missing health. That means that if you are missing half of your HP, you will get only half of the damage. Basically, it's like having a 50% HP boost on top of your HP bar, but you translate that into damage, which is a cool idea. They changed a couple of traits as well, but overall the most parts of the changes are made in survival mode, so they shouldn't affect your normal gameplay too much, only when you play survival. And that was it for the new patch notes updates. The game is live right now, the update is live, and the DLC is live for all the platforms. These changes have been already on PC for a week by now, but I wanted to wait for the DLC launch in order to publish the video, because now they will be on all platforms. And that was it for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you did, leave a like if it was helpful. I also have a Discord server with a Remnant section. The link will be in the description. If you want to drop by, share the things you find in the new DLC, or discussing builds with the community, looking for team members, feel free and more than welcome. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Ocan's out.